Okay, so we're going to drive the state of this component using Redux. So let's install Redux. So to install Redux, we're going to do npm install Redux. So this is going to download the library, the Redux, that will allow us to maintain the state. So this is the core library called Redux, right? Which it can work with any other rendering library. It could work with Angular. It can work with jQuery. It's not specific to React. Right? So the Redux is a state management library that can be used with any rendering engine. To have something that is specific that ties into React, we need to install another library, the React Redux library. Right. So this is going to download some hooks and some connectors that are going to allow us to tie the Redux library with our React. Right. Once we've done that, we can start managing the state. Okay. So what we'd like to be able to do is what Redux does is that it allows us to create finite state machines. Right? Maybe where we can calculate, the next state. If you look at a state machine, basically what it does is that it has a set of states, and based on certain events or actions, right, it transitions from one state to the next. Right? Basically, that's what it does, right? So it needs what the state is. It needs to know what state it's in, and based on that state and the combination of multiple different types of actions, it will decide what is the next state. Make sense? Right? So for instance, if this is the state, right? The state right now might be that that the modules, right, is equal to some array. Right, that's the current state. Right, these are the current modules in the state. We would like to create a function that, based on module finite state machine, based on some initial state, based on some state, and based on some action, it can calculate the next state. Right? You can calculate what the next state is. Make sense? And in this case, we can say that by default, for right now, we're just going to return the current state. We're not going to transition yet. Right? So presumably we might have here several if-else statements based on whatever actions. We might decide what the next state is. Maybe if the state is to remove a module, we'll maybe modify this array so that it doesn't have that particular module, or add a module. So all those are the types of events that we might want to handle. Yes, right? And then we would modify this array. Right now, we're just going to hard code it and come back with that particular finite the same state always. We will do the transitions in a minute. All right, everybody okay? All right. So to do this, we would like to be able to share this state with all the components. Right? Somehow, create kind of like a storage of all these states, right? And then share it with everybody with all the components, and then each component can then pick out what it needs to render. Right? In particular, the module list needs this list of modules. Yes, right? And in the state, we could have all sorts of things, not just the modules, right? We could have other variables, right? All the state variables. We can have any number of things in here. Okay, we can have any number of things in the state. In particular, we have the list of modules. Right? Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we're going to use Redux. Right? So Redux allows us to grab the definition of a finite state machine, right? And then share it with everybody, provide it to the rest of the components underneath. Right? And the way it does it is as follows. It uses a function called create store. Did it load? Complete blah 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 npm match complete. What's going on? Okay, wait a minute. I think I might have. Yeah, let's remove this yarn lock. And probably, let me try that again. The install didn't work. Okay, now it's loading it. Again, let me remove yarn lock. Probably remove the entire node modules. Let's see, Januzzi, webdev, 2020, 4500. We need React here, and let's blow away my node modules. Move to trash. Let's rebuild this, npm install. So what npm install does is that it looks at the let me remove package JSON lock. Try it again. Package JSON, npm install. Okay, it's loading everything. Yeah, package log and sometimes yarn log. It says get into a fight amongst what versions of things should be installed. So usually when you get into those issues, it's better to just blow away the entire node modules directory and any lock files and have the whole thing rebuilt. npm install reads your package JSON file, right, and all those dependencies, and you can install them again. And this is exactly what Heroku does, right? When it when you push a new code into Heroku, when it deploys, it runs npm install and rebuilds your entire all the libraries. All right, so we're rebuilding this from scratch, and then we can add Redux. Okay, let's make sure we can install npm install Redux. Okay, all right, now it's installing Redux. And that's going to take a little bit. So meanwhile, we have the state. Okay, we did that. Now React Redux. So basically, this finite state machine is going to be able to calculate the next state, and what Redux is going to be able to do is take this finite state machine and provide it what the current state is and the actions, and then ask what's the next state, and then it's going to take that state, it's going to share it with everybody who wants to take a look at that state, right? Okay, I think it's done. Okay, now I think it was successful. All right, now let's try and import, create store. Why don't I see create store? Let's see, const store create store. It doesn't see it. The finite state machine. Oh, it's indexing. That's what it is. Still indexing. All right. So what it does is that it keeps track it keeps track of of all these. Create store doesn't see it. Why don't you see create store? Let's see. Import create store from Redux. There we go. Okay, so I do have Redux installed. So what Redux is going to do is that it's going to create not only just one state, it's going to keep track of the history of all the states that have been ever created. Right? It follows the philosophy that as opposed to the out-of-the-box state management, right? Typically the way we think about the state is that the state is mutating over time. Yes, we go from one state, and then we tweak that state, and when the state changes, we then re-render the user interface. Yes, right. There was a mutation of the state. Instead, what Redux says is that, well, no, I'm not going to mutate the state. Instead, what I'll do is that I'll just generate a brand new state. right? I won't look at the I won't modify anything, right? Instead, what I'll do is that I'll keep track of a history of all the states that have ever been here, right? And what your function is going to do is it's always going to calculate what the next state is, right? What this allows you to do is to do things such as undo, right? So that you could perhaps traverse this history of states, right, backwards and forwards in time, so that you can perhaps re-update the state of the application by looking at what my previous state was. Right? So an undo, for instance, would be just move the state of the application to my previous state, and if you want to redo, it would be move the state of the application to the state forward in time. Yes. Right, so undo and redo would be very, very easy to implement, right? If you would have the history of all the states that you've been. Yes. Right now we're not going to do that. We're always going to just look at the very last state, right? And it's going to behave as if we were modifying the state, but we're not modifying. We're always just recalculating this finite state machine. Is always going to recalculate what the next state is based on the previous state, right? The current state, and then a new action. Make sense? All right. So the store is going to keep track of all the possible states. So we're going to create the store from the finite state machine. Once we have that store, we can provide that application level store or state, right, to the rest of the application by using a component called provider. And the provider wants to know where am I going to grab the state from? You're going to grab it from this particular store, right? So what this does is that we are wrapping our entire course editor with a provider, right? What this does is that it says all the components under me are going to share the same store, right? So the module list, the lesson editor, the topics editor, right, all the widget lists, they're all going to share the same store, right? And they can pick out the pieces that they need. All right. So let's see if we can. It doesn't resolve it. It's in here. Import provider from React Redux. Right, so the provider notice that the create store is part of the core Redux library, right? That can be used across anybody can use the create store, whereas a provider is something that is specific to React. This is where the boundary of the core Redux library meets React, right? That's the interface between the core library of Redux and then how it's implemented and it ties into React. Right? So the provider is how we provide the data to everybody else underneath. So everybody underneath me, including now the module list and the lessons and the topics, are going to have access to whatever the finite state machine provides. Right? So this modules, this state variable, everybody's going to be able to read from it. The module list component, the lesson tabs, everybody's going to be able to read from it. So I don't really need to pass these modules anymore. Right? The parent no longer has a dependency. The child no longer has a dependency on the parent. Right? Instead, it can read the state from this global storage. Make sense? Everybody good? All right. So let's see how we can. The module list is now going to be able to say, hey, give me the list of modules from the store, not from my parent. All right. So let's see how that works.